Bruh.
Yo, welcome back to the channel, boys and girls. Today is a very special video because after 3 years of reviewing cheap and affordable frame sets, I have finally purchased my dream frame, which is the Giant Propel Advance Pro. As you can imagine, I am very excited, and I want to thank all you viewers out there who've been supporting me over these last 3 years. And just having your support, the love you've shown me, if I've met you in person out on the road, all of that is simply a testament to the progression of this channel. So in today's video, guys, we're going to talk about the frame set. Of course, I'm going to talk about why I chose to go with Giant, the ordering process, why specifically I chose the Propel Advance Pro version of the frame set, the specs, the weight of the frame set, of course my plans for the build. As you can imagine, since this is going to be a dream build for me, this will not be a budget build. And the main objective of this frame as a whole is going to be, can I actually feel the difference between going with a big budget frame such as the Giant Propel versus some of the cheaper frames that I've tested in the past. So without further ado, let's begin. Okay, so first off, who is Giant? Well, unless you've been living under a rock, Giant, at least here in the United States, they are a direct-to-consumer brand, and they are one of the largest bike brands and manufacturers in the entire world. And they have everything from road bikes to cyclocross bikes to mountain bikes, everything, you name it. And you can actually see their Giant Propel frame set being used at the highest pinnacle level of racing. And one of the things that Giant is known for is, besides just being very innovative with their products and their designs, they have their own wind tunnel to test out frames. But because they are more of a direct-to-consumer brand, they are able to offer very competitive frame sets at a price point that's going to be a little bit lower than the likes of Specialized and Trek. Alrighty, moving on to the contents inside of this big old ginormous Giant frame box. So you might be wondering, when you're spending your hard-earned money at this price range or more, what should you expect inside of a box, especially coming from a brand of this size? So of course we have the owner's manual, we have some directions. Actually, I think this card is for if you want to download the manual in different languages. So that's part of the owner's manual. It also comes with instructions on how to properly route the cables and set that up for the fork. This envelope is probably for mailing in your warranty information. I don't know. Another thing too that's really nice is included with this frame set is you get a set of Giant's own bottle cages. The reason being is because the down tube is pretty flat. So having sort of aero optimized bottle cages that are included is a nice touch. You figure bottle cages can cost anywhere between $25 to $100. So it's nice that they included that with the frame set. And then we have all of the hardware that you're going to need. So the frame mount, of course, all of the spacers, the headsets, etc. All of that is packaged really well. So far, compared to this frame, compared to my Specialized LA Sprint, this is about equal as far as how everything was packaged very well. Of course, we have our saddle here. This is carbon rails. We'll get to that later. And of course, the carbon stem as well. Both of these were accessories that I had to purchase extra. They are not included with the price of the frame set. But so far, everything looks really, really good. And it's exactly what you would expect for a frame at this price point. One thing I forgot to mention is inside of this plastic bag containing all the hardware is a Giant. They basically have thought of everything. Included with this bag is you get a long rubber sound insulation for routing the cables internally to prevent them from making noise in the down tube. That's a really nice touch. They've also included various paste and grease things you'll need for your build. Extra derailleur hangers as well, your spacers, all those things. They even included some plastic frame protectors as well. So really nice touch for Giant. Honestly, this is something that I would expect at this price range, but it still is nice to see nonetheless.
Alrighty, boys and girls, you know what time it is. But before we get to weighing out all of the components and the frame itself, now you guys know that I couldn't just pull out just any vinyl LP. I had to pull out the original composed in motion picture soundtrack to Shaft. Look at that. Even the font color itself, Shaft, is basically the same color as on the Giant logo. But if you don't know who Shaft is at this point, I don't really know what to tell you. But last I heard, he's a complicated man and no one understands him but his woman. Shaft! Can you dig it? They also say that shaft is a bad mother. Watch yourself, or watch your mouth, whatever. All right, first we'll do the frame. Now the frame is for a size medium large. Yikes. All right, for size medium large frame, 1,071 grams. Keep in mind that the bottle cage bolts are included, as well as the front and rear derailleur hangers. 1,071 grams, size medium large. Next up is the carbon seat post. Included with that is the saddle rail clamps as well. We have 198 grams, 198 grams. Uncut fork. We have 361 grams. All right, we have the carbon saddle. This is the Fleet SLR saddle, 185 grams. Nice. All right, and then we have our carbon stem. This is the Giant Contact SLR Aero stem. This is a 140 millimeter length stem with a negative 10-degree angle. And for this, we have 163 grams. And then we have the supplied carbon bottle cages. We'll do that. The first one, 36. The second one on there. Alrighty, so for the set of Giant Aero carbon bottle cages, we have 61 grams. Very, very nice. And I figured I might as well go ahead and weigh out the through axles since the ones that Giant supplies are quite nice. So this is the one that goes in, I believe, the fork. 55 grams. The rear axle or through axle is 44 grams. Alrighty, so for combined, I don't know if the math is mathing, but we have a total for both of the through axles, 99 grams. So let's continue.
So I'm going to put some numbers up on the screen for you guys right now, but the Giant Propel, as you can imagine, comes in as being the lightest frame set that I've ever tested on this channel thus far. And that would make sense considering this frame set costs $3,000 and some of these other ones on this list range anywhere from $500 to $1,500. So no doubt, part of what you are paying for at the $3,000 price point is you're paying for a light frame that's using an advanced level of carbon, but only time will tell to see how it actually rides out on the road. And like I mentioned, this frame set is more or less the second tier version of what Giant offers in the Propel. And so here are some other weights for comparison. So this would compare well with a Tarmac SL8 Pro, not the S-Works version, just a specialized version. Also with the Tarmac SO7, as you can see, that one is closely weighed with this one. The Cervelo Soloist, that one is heavier than the Propel. The Trek Madone is also heavier. And of course, the Merito Reacto, the Rival Edition version, is also heavier than the Advanced Pro Propel. So you might be wondering, with all of the bike builds that I have done in the last 3 years, how am I able to set up the bike fit on these new bike builds so quickly? Well, the easiest way to do that, in my opinion, is going to see a professional bike fitter. That way they can get you fitted, they can record all of the data points so you can save them from bike build to bike build. But when it comes to a professional bike fit, in my opinion, the two most important data points that you need to be cognizant of is your saddle or seat setback from the bottom bracket area, as well as your saddle height. Now, if you don't want to go see a professional bike fitter and you already have your old bike or your previous bike that is set up correctly and is comfortable, then what you can do is basically you could stick in this paper tube that I have between both of the bottom brackets. So the old bike is the Yishan R086D, as well as, of course, the Giant Propel Advance. So what I did was with this paper tubing within the bottom bracket area on both bikes is this allows me to essentially set up the bike perfectly. That way I can compare the saddle height, and most importantly is I can compare the saddle setback. So if you don't want to use a bike fitter, This is a tried and true way. That way you don't go ruining your knees when you get on your new bike build. Now moving on to the front end of the bike. Now setting that up isn't as important as setting up the back end when it comes to your saddle. The reason being is because for the front end, when it comes to your reach, that can be a little bit more dynamic of a bike fit depending on how aggressive of a fit that you want. But what's interesting to note is with the Yishan R086D frame set, the reach on this frame is actually a bit longer than the Giant Propel. However, the stem on the Giant Propel is 140 millimeters long versus the Yishan is only 130 millimeters long. So that actually sort of compensates for the lack of reach on the Giant Propel, and the carbon handlebars that I'm going to use for the Giant Propel is going to basically be the same specs in reach and drop and all that as on my Yishan. So I should be able to more or less set up my Giant Propel basically 1-for-1 to my Yishan R086D frame set, because I do require a lot of reach, and even with the drop should basically be about the same as well. Now, although Giant does have a direct-to-consumer business model, you can actually go into a local Giant authorized dealership, which could be your local bike shop, to actually order anything that you want from Giant. In fact, the local bike shops, they kind of recommend that you order your frame set this way, even though they don't charge you anything extra for this. But basically, the ordering process for what I did was I went into my local bike shop that was a Giant dealer. I told them the specs I wanted as far as the size, the color, and then any other sort of accessories that I wanted. In this case, this was the saddle as well as the carbon stem. I placed a deposit down. I basically had to pay about half the cost of everything up front. And then honestly, not even 4 or 5 business days later, basically 5 calendar days total, my frame set arrived at the bike shop. And what's cool about having your bike sent to, or your frame sent to a bike shop, is if you want to have the bike built up, say you're buying a complete bike with the wheels, group set, etc., that Giant authorized dealer or bike shop can build the bike up for you as well. So I really like that Giant does offer up a couple different models for you to do. If you want to go ahead and build it yourself, you can have your frame set shipped directly to your house. Or if you wanted to do what I did, where you wanted that little bit of extra safety net, I had my frame set sent to my local bike shop. Next up, why I specifically chose the Propel Advanced Pro version of the frame set. So if you spend a little bit of time on Giant's website, you'll know that their highest end Propel, which is their SL version, it's a really nice frame. It's super stiff. It's going to be very lightweight. However, Giant does not offer that particular tier of frame set as a frame only option on their website. At the time of this recording, the only version of the frame set that you can buy as just a frame alone option is only the Propel Advanced Pro. This is their second tier version. And another reason why I went with this option is because I really like the price point of this frame set. The frame came in for just a frame alone option at $3,000 USD, which isn't cheap, of course, by any means, but it does make it cheaper than, say, something like the Specialized Tarmac SO Late Pro version, not the S-Works version, but just the Tarmac Pro version. And the third reason why I chose to go with this model or this spec is because I didn't want to deal with the integrated seat mass of the SLL version. Now, I don't have any plans on selling this frame down the road by any means, anything like that. But when it comes to resale costs or resale prices and anything like that, it's going to be a lot harder to sell the SO version of the frame set if you are having to deal with cutting the integrated seat mass in order to spec it to your saddle height. Moving right along, let's talk about the specs of this frame set because the frame looks absolutely killer. So I went with the size medium large for my height. For reference, I am 183 centimeters tall, basically 6 feet tall. And the color that is described on the website for this frame set is Phantom Green Digital Blurple Carbon. But basically what that means is it's a raw carbon style with a very faint coat of matte black, which you can actually see some of the raw carbon directly in the sunlight at certain angles. And then the decals are essentially a chameleon, green, and purple. For having a bike that's going to be my forever bike, I really wanted something a little bit more understated this time around. As much as I love my Windspace T1500 Aero frame set, it's a very charming, it's a very obvious obvious color when you see it on the road. But for this bike, for this being my forever bike, I wanted something a little bit more under the radar, a little bit something that's going to match with everything that I wear. And now that I've been reviewing some of these frame sets, these cheap frame sets of recently, I've gotten to sort of like having a more understated frame color. Now, some of the differences between the Advanced Pro versus the top-end SL version, which of course is the price because that one is like $5,000 at least. Both the tier versions of the frame, they're using the same fork. They're using the identical arrow shaping throughout the majority of the frame, with of course the SL version is using the integrated seat mass versus the conventional style of seat post that I have. Also with the SL, they are using a little bit higher tier grade of carbon, which makes it a little bit lighter, a little bit stiffer. But the good news is comparing the Advanced Pro model of the version that I have versus the previous version, the frame is a little bit lighter and the fork itself is also a little bit lighter as well. Now, just looking at the frame in general, you can kind of tell where the trend is these days when it comes to the one bike to rule them all. You can see that at the front end of the frame set, that this is where all of the aero design has gone to. And then when you move to the rear of the frame, you can see that things get a lot more thinner or skinny, as you can say. Especially this is noticeable with the seat stays, with the chain stay, and even with the seat post itself. You can see it's more of a climbing sort of proportions in the rear of the frame, and then when you move back to the front of the frame, you can tell, especially with the super deep head tube, that it's all about aerodynamics in the front. So moving on to my plans for this build. So like I mentioned, this is not going to be a budget build by any means. I'm already in the hole for $3,000 for the frame set. The carbon stem that Giant supplies, that came in at like a whopping $350. Can you imagine that? $300 for a carbon stem. The saddle was on sale. I got the saddle for like $175, but already in the hole with tax. I'm already in for like $4,000. I'm going to be fitting this with Shimano Di2 12 speed. And even though I had that from a previous bike, that cost me like $2,000. And then of course, my all-time favorite wheels that I've ever tested are the Windspace or Loon Hyper D67 wheels. Those are going to run you these days like $1,500. So already, if you are doing the math, we are already in, what is that, 3 or 4, 6, we're already in for like $7,000. So I don't even know if this is even going to be a good deal, but the whole point of this is that I finally got to a point, based on the hard work I put in over all these years and all of your support, that I'm able even to build up a bike such as this one. And the last thing I want to talk about is actually a question. And that question is, will I actually be able to feel the tangible differences going with a big name brand frame set such as this Giant Propel compared to something like a Windspace T1500, a Specialized LA Sprint, my Yolio R12, or even my most recent build, my Yishan R086D frame set? Because all of those frames provide a really good value for the price that you're getting. So I just want to know, whether or not the differences will be subtle, will they be astronomical, will it be something in the middle? And that's what we're going to find out. And this is why I chose to buy this particular frame set. It's unique. There are not a lot of people here in Chicago that are riding Giant frame sets in general. There's so much coverage right now on YouTube when it comes to the Specialized SL8. And this is going to be a good opportunity for me to basically put this bike through its paces to see if it's actually worth the money. So I'm going to wrap up today's video right here, guys. And as always, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please feel free to leave them down below, and I will check you guys on the next one. Thank you so much for all of your support over these last 3 years. I want to say it's probably been like 3 years almost to the day. But anyway, I will check you guys on the next one. Peace.